So thanks everyone for coming to this meeting. I'm now going to turn the floor over to Odette Dantzer. She works as the program lead for WorkAble, which is a 12-month paid internship program that hires recent post-secondary graduates with disabilities.
So hi, everybody. I'm Odette Dantzer, and I am the program lead and the accessibility lead for the Public Service Agency in the BC Public Service. And really, the Public Service Agency is just kind of like the human resource arm of government. So my role is running the WorkAble program. And before I talk about that, I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm coming to you today from the Lekwungen territory. So I just wanted, I don't know if people heard, but I did just acknowledge that I'm on Lekwungen territory. And then I just wanted to just talk a little bit about the WorkAble Graduate Internship Program. So to date, since 2015-16, there's been 25 different host ministries that have provided 84 12-month internship. And we're going into our 6th year. So currently I'm recruiting host ministries, and hopefully we'll be able to post at the beginning of March. So just a little bit about WorkAble. It is for recent graduates who self-identify as having a disability, and education can be a 2-year diploma, an associate degree, an undergrad, or a master's or a doctorate. And we track the cohort numbers, and what are the numbers is how many people complete it and what our retention rate. And overall, we have a 59% retention rate out of this really small cohort of people finding jobs within the public service. And that is one of the main goals of the internship, is to support interns to get that sort of paid work experience, resume builder activities, and hope that they decide to make the BC Public Service their career choice. And so kind of about at this time of the year, like beginning of March, working with the current cohort, we start to really focus in on career development and aspiration. I want to talk a little bit about the job descriptions that we create, that host ministries create. So there tends to be in streams of policy, well, you can read that on the screen, but what we are finding is that there may be sometimes a combination of streams, but essentially it's in these kind of 5 areas. And so people who apply to the program or one of these job descriptions, they're more than likely qualified for more than one position, but maybe not qualified for all positions. And we strive to always have 20, but it just depends on how many host ministries are participating. What is really, really important, and it's very intentional, is that whatever the job requirements are on a job posting, the person applying will have transferable skills. They may not have the subject matter, but they have the transferable skills because of what they did in school. So as an example, one of the requirements might be managing projects or components of projects. And so all applicants would have had that because in school, there would have likely been a group assignment. And that's really project management. It's also transferable not only in the actual how do you do project management or managing components of that project, but there's also the social side, the conflict resolution, the social skills, and how you get along with people within your group. And so sometimes a job requirement will be, working with other folks across government, cross-section of government, in order to achieve a particular project deliverable. And so some of those soft skills come into play as well. So the person, even though they have those sort of concrete transferable skills, there's also an opportunity for them to demonstrate some of the soft skills that they would have developed through school. And the other thing about the job description is that there's flexibility. And especially during COVID, we are moving, for this current cohort, we have moved to not bum and seat in a particular region, but bum and seat at home. And so there's a lot of flexibility, which is really beneficial for folks who maybe have some supports that they get at home. And so it allows them to do that and still work from home. I have no idea what it will be like post-COVID, but I'm anticipating that a lot of the things that we've learned through the pandemic in terms of working from home and that flexibility and virtual environments will continue to be with us after the COVID pandemic is gone. And that's one of them, is that having that balance between maybe some days you work from home and some days you go into the office. There are some positions, though, where folks would have to go into the office, and that has been really clearly identified for next year, not this current year because COVID hit all of us by surprise. But I think what's really key with any of the things that we do in WorkAble is that flexibility. We also try to get people or positions hosted in a regional location so that if we do go back to the office, the person can have that option of attending a team meeting in person or a training event, but they continue to work from home. One of the things that was really clear pre-COVID, and I imagine will be the same post-COVID, is that if you had to relocate to move to one of these locations, because that's where you got your job, then you might be leaving your support network, your family, your friends, your medical support network. And if you have to move to a place like Vancouver, Kelowna, Kamloops or Victoria, the vacancy rate is quite low, although I just noticed the other day that it is climbing, but that's because of COVID stuff. You can't get a doctor in Victoria, Vancouver, or Kamloops. And you'd come here and you'd be isolated and alone. So a lot of the things are still kind of in flux, but I imagine, and again, I'm predicting, although I don't have a crystal ball, but I anticipate that it won't be so much about regional information come the future. It'll be more about bum in seat at home and being able to participate, which then leads to how are we going to support people working from home. So learning this year from, just back up. Learning this year from doing everything virtual, it is possible, and it's planning in a different way. So for this current cohort, we did everything virtual. We recruited, we hired, we onboarded, people worked virtually from their homes. There was a bit of a time in December where the direction was from the BC Public Service to go back to work because we thought things were safe, and the public health, Dr. Henry thought it was safe. However, that was short-lived, and then very quickly, unless you were an essential worker, we were all directed back home. Interns are not considered essential workers. So they will never, for this current cohort, they would never be directed to come back into the office. The other thing about privacy and interns, some program learnings, is that within the disability spectrum, there are some folks who are really comfortable talking about their disability and what they need, all the way to the other end where people are very private and don't necessarily want to share. So we can't always guarantee that that information will be confidential. There will always be some people who will know within your branch, division, ministry that a person is a WorkAble intern, but they should never be introduced as a WorkAble intern. And it's up to the intern themselves if they want to say, yeah, I'm okay with you introducing me that way. We do ask for bios from all of the interns when they're hired, and some interns will share that they're part of WorkAble and some will not. So that's kind of the first indicator as to how somebody feels about whether they're open or not. But while we can't always guarantee confidentiality, we want to honor people's privacy. And if they want to share, then we do. If they don't want to share, then we don't. But the caveat is there will be some people who will know that you're part of the WorkAble cohort. Some of our learnings, so we changed education from 2 to 3 years. It used to be just a recent graduate within 2 years. We included a 2-year diploma and associate degree. We also, because of the virtual recruitment, we have always done information sessions, but this past cohort, I ran several information sessions to meet people's schedules and to also answer questions. And I just stayed on as long as people had questions, and people asked in different ways for the same information, which is reflective of their learning style and how they asked for questions. So I just kept answering all of their questions. So with that recruitment or that information session, folks also get a document that is a written document with all of the information that I am providing. We keep refining that based on the questions that we get asked. And so after 2 to 3 years, I think we finally have an information session document that is as clear as it can be, but we are also totally open to folks providing further feedback to make something even clearer. When people apply after the information session and they understand kind of the recruitment process, they will receive 2 assessments, and one is sort of a financial Excel spreadsheet, and the other one is a written type of assessment. Everybody, again, we send those out in the morning, then we host an information session in the afternoon, and I answer people's questions as many times in as many different ways as I can. Once that I have answered all of their questions, then the door is sort of closed for people to ask further questions. And then they have a period of time, it's usually 3 to 5 days, to provide the results, those assessments. And they go back into our program assistant. And what Nadia does is she redacts all of the personal information so that when they are being scored by myself, and there's 2 other people who score it, we don't know who is who. So it helps to mitigate any bias that we might have. And then because I tend to be a harder marker, and somebody else may be an easier marker, as long as we're consistent, then we average the 3 scores that people get, which then we believe is reflective of that final score. We cannot provide that to the applicants until all of the positions that they have applied to are complete and done. So they may be applying for 2 or 3 positions. We use those assessments as part of our screening when we get to recruiting that particular position. I do provide coaching feedback to applicants as soon as I can. I know that some folks really want to get feedback on their assessments, but they've still in the hopper to apply for other jobs, and I can't provide that feedback at that time. However, if somebody comes for an interview and they are not successful, I can give them feedback on their interview, not their assignments at that point, so that should they move to another interview, they're going to be able to incorporate my feedback and do better. I have discovered that by giving that ongoing feedback, there are some interns, applicants, who don't get the first job, but they get the second job that they've interviewed for because I've been providing that feedback. Along that line too, we do practice interviews with everybody. It is mandatory because doing competency-based interviewing is hard and people really do need to prepare for it. And so by doing those practice interviews, people get feedback on the spot. It does not prevent them from moving forward or not moving forward. So the practice interviews are just a way for people to understand how to do them. And we will do as many as we need to until the person really understands how to do them. So the recruitment that we did this current year was all virtual, as I said, and we did it all through Microsoft Teams. And the reason why I like Microsoft Teams is because it's an accessible platform for folks who use assistive technology. It does have closed captioning in it, which isn't the best yet. It's getting better based on artificial intelligence. So if somebody indicates that they are hard of hearing, then I might also ask them if they would like to have CART services, which is closed captioning live, so that they're able to follow what is being said. Once people are hired and the recruitment is all said and done, then there are regular support meetings for all of the successful interns. So we have monthly 2-hour check-ins, and we also have 2 program days, one in the spring and one in the fall. And those are opportunities for the program to provide some really focused learning opportunities. So as an example, our spring program days at the beginning of March, and we are doing all kinds of things around career exploration. So I have some alumni coming to share how they found a job at the end of their internship. I have somebody coming to talk about informational interviews, somebody to talk about networking, and somebody to talk about resume development. Then the 2-hour monthly meetings for March, April, May, I have a guest speaker coming in, and we will be doing practice competency-based interviewing and really helping people understand how to do them again, because it's been a while since they did them. Part of the networking is really critical for securing employment moving forward. And so we'll be talking about how you do that and how you do informational interviews to really understand, is this a place you want to work or not want to work? Interns learn through the course of the 12 months to be attached to the purpose of what they're doing versus the daily work, as things can change very, very quickly in the public service. As an example, in the fall, there was an election call. That was a bit of a surprise, I think, to lots of folks. Well, when there's an election called, we have what's called an interregnum period, and all work stops. So there's no new initiatives, there's no new ideas, there's no new programs, there's nothing, because there is no government in place per se. And so at that point, interns, there were a few of them were infected this year, impacted. So they had to quickly transfer to other work that needed to be done. And there's always lots of work to be done. So it's sometimes hard for folks to understand. Be attached to the purpose. Why are you doing this work and the job versus the everyday stuff? Because that can change. And some interns find it really hard to stop working on projects because they feel passionate about it. They feel involved in it. They feel like this is really important. However, if, especially during an interregnum period and getting a new government, that work may change if you get a new minister, a new deputy minister. And so it's really sometimes hard for folks to understand the bureaucracy and how that works. However, we do have mentors, and mentors in the WorkAble program are similar to what one of your members talked about. It is an ongoing relationship. The mentor is either volunteers. They know that there's an intern coming into their branch, so they volunteer. Sometimes folks are approached by the supervisor because they think they would be a really good mentor. The difference between the mentor and the supervisor is the supervisor is the one that assigns the work and says, Odette, why isn't this work done? Do you need more support? Do you need more time, like what's going on? The mentor doesn't have to hold their feet to the fire for the work. The mentor can coach, navigate, interpret what's going on, help them understand, what does interregnum period? Why do we have to stop working? The supervisor can do that too, but usually supervisors are very busy. So we have a heavy reliance on mentors in this role in the program to help support. Talk about career exploration, like whatever the intern is interested, that mentor is there for them. Sometimes there's some personality conflicts, or there's an intern not understanding what the supervisor meant. The intern can go and talk to the mentor and say, like, what did the supervisor mean when she said that? And because of the strong relationship that mentor may have with the supervisor, they can reinterpret and say, oh, no, she's really open. It's just, I'm not sure, how you're getting that message. So the mentorship role, I think, is the best role. My personal opinion is because they get to develop that relationship, and often mentors stay connected with the intern way beyond the internship dates of September through to the end of August. The thing that I do have noticed over the past several years is at the end, it's really difficult for interns because they've gotten to know people. They kind of understand what their role is. They understand sort of navigating within the public service. And they don't want to leave because they love it and people love them. So it's a matter of providing them with information and resources to help them secure a position in the public service and do that in a way that they feel successful. They are also what we call, they receive what we call in-service status, and that means that they can apply for internally posted positions before that no external applicant would ever see. And so it's really beneficial to support folks to look for jobs, even with the internship ends and they haven't been able to secure a position. And sometimes folks get a position, like probably a couple of months ago, somebody from a couple of years ago just got back into the public service. So I stay in touch with alumni and even folks who are not connected or don't get a job. If they stay in touch with me, I stay in touch with them, and I'm more than willing to support them, help them navigate, network, etc. These are just some intern testimonials from last year. I think what is really comes through is lots of interns feel that they have been able to have an opportunity and a chance to kind of spread their wings, get some confidence, learn about social skills, learn about how things work in the work world. They often gain confidence and maturity. And why I like my job so much is that I see them at the beginning, I'm in touch with them every single month, and I see them at the end. And it's transformational in that they really come into their own. And I will be sending this PowerPoint to you, Joette, so you can share this. So if people don't have a chance to read all of these in detail, you can do that. And then I just have a couple of supervisor and mentor testimonials. And what the supervisors tend to find is that they have a highly motivated, very competent, capable working employee, sometimes to the point where the supervisor and myself have to say, you can't work any longer than your 7.5-hour days. And that's part of what interns sometimes struggle with as well, is they come from a university or academic setting, and they're used to working evenings on the weekends to get their school assignments done. And when you come to the public service, you're not expected to work more than your sort of, hours that you are working during the day. There's no expectation to work in the evenings or on the weekends. And I have had some interns say to me, yeah, but I just want to get this done. And I say, no, it'll be here tomorrow, and that's part of their learning how to have that work-life balance. We can't pay you to work overtime, and you put us in a liable position if we do end up working overtime and something happens to you. So really, you only need to work your scheduled hours. I've had a couple interns say, well, what will I do with my time? And I'm saying, develop a hobby, take up reading, do a binge on Netflix. But really, work is work, and personal life aside is your personal life, and so develop some hobbies. The timeline coming up for this next year, right now I'm recruiting host ministries. I'm hoping to get 20. The posting will go up beginning of March, and it's usually up a couple of months, sometimes longer. May to August is sort of the screening, assessments, interview, and selection. Then we have a virtual orientation, and during that virtual orientation, it is sort of Monday to Friday, but people get fatigued, and so you can't be in a virtual meeting all day long. It just is not possible. It's not possible for me to physically facilitate and get speakers in, and it's really hard for interns to stay that way. So we break it up. So you may start in the morning, you may have a couple-hour break, you may have lunch on your own, and then we break it up with presentations, interactive kinds of stuff. So you're not on screen 8:30 to 4:30 for those 5 days. So we do break it up. And then the day after Labor Day, folks start in their respective internships. And for this next year, the in-service status that I talked about, they get it on July 1st of 2022. And then the end of the internship is August 29th, 2022. Questions? I've kind of done an overview of the program. There's lots of things that I haven't dived into details with, but I'm totally open to detailed type questions or anything.
Thank you, Odette, for the presentation. I had a question.
Go ahead.
So I'm curious, you mentioned that you accept applicants that have a 2-year diploma at the post-secondary level.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if an applicant were to have a 2-year diploma plus a certificate that's maybe only 6 months to a year long, would that certificate, assuming that they had learned skills that were transferable to the public service, also be counted?
Unfortunately, no. I mean, if the person has a certificate, that's great, and the education that they have, the 2-year diploma, meets the designation of within 3 years, then yes. But a certificate alone will not be considered as part of the eligibility criteria to get into the program.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Erin, I think you were meaning certificate in conjunction with a degree, were you not?
I was thinking of a certificate plus a diploma or a degree. whatever combination of those two?
Yeah, so the certificate doesn't really matter. I mean, that's great that you have that under your belt per se, like you have that knowledge, but your degree, associate degree, undergrad degree have to be within the 3 years.
Okay.
But then in terms of any of the experience that you draw from, it can be from, I would assume, or can it not, from work, from your certificate
Yes.
program, from your degree, from life?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you can absolutely, you know, lots of folks don't have a lot of work experience that apply to this program. So we accept volunteer, work, school, anything like that. We do try, I try to recommend for people to be cautious when they're using personal experiences for any of, you know, demonstrating how you meet a specific job requirement, because sometimes people can get so enmeshed in the personal experience, they're not actually answering how they meet that job requirement. So I do urge a bit of caution on that. If it works, that's great, but just be cautious about how you use your personal experience when you're, and if you're going to use that, how does that transfer to the workplace?
In line with that thinking, Odette, can you give a few more concrete examples of how your academic experience might translate to some of the qualifications that you're looking for? For example, you mentioned group assignments being transferable to project management, or social parts being transferable, so that kind of thing.
Yeah, so for sure. So if it's a communication type job, one of the requirements might be, you know, utilizing communication techniques. And so everybody's likely done a presentation. So you've used PowerPoint. You've had to speak to your colleagues, whether it's virtual or in person, pre-COVID. So you are already understanding, you've had experience on doing presentations to your prof, to your group, to your class. So that's where you have that transferable skill around communication techniques. Another one is, you know, a big one in the public service is sort of that analytical thinking around research. So whether that's, you know, quantitative or qualitative research. Well, all students have done papers, and you've all had to do some type of research, whether it's online, whether it's in databases, journal articles. So whether you've done quantitative or qualitative, when you're interpreting quantitative results, you're also that data is telling a story, so you're interpreting that. So that's another example of sort of transferable kinds of skills. You might not have the subject matter in the particular job description, but you have the skill of knowing how to research, how to do jurisdictional scans. Again, if you've done research in school, you know, if you start reviewing a particular topic, you may get into, oh, so, you know, Canada does it this way, whereas the States does it this way. So again, you have those transferable skills of research that is really, really critical. Another one might be, sometimes they ask for proficient use of Microsoft products. Well, in COVID, everybody has been using, you know, virtual tools. They've been using word processing, you know, Excel, PowerPoint. So you do have those transferable skills. Sometimes people may not have information technology or IT kinds of transferable skills unless they're actually applying for that kind of position. However, if you have, you know, you've done Word documents and you know about formatting, you know how to make them accessible, then you have some of that experience in terms of working, you know, with information technology. How do you write to make things plain language that's going to be web content for somebody to read? So again, it's looking at those kinds of things. Yeah, so those are some examples off the top of my head. There's probably more that I can think of, but does that help?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions about the program?
I don't want to dominate, but a couple more questions or just observations. I continue to be impressed with how thoroughly thought out this process is, and how much ongoing support it provides to these internships. I think it's an example, a model for other programs, and totally appreciative of that. It's very long though, and that's not a criticism. I don't think one can do one without the other. You can't have that level of detail and ongoing support without a long process like this. But I'm sure you appreciate, but that's hard on people.
Yeah.
You know, usually it's easier to move on and to get your head into the next thing that you're applying for if you don't have an outstanding question mark. And so this goes on from March till the beginning of September, and you might not even know till the end of August.
Right.
So I just want to caution individuals engaged in this that they need to find a way of digesting that reality, but also that to invest as much of themselves as they can to be enthusiastic and thorough in applying, because that is absolutely what's required. But at the same time, to reserve a part of themselves where they can move on and still apply to other things.
Yes, absolutely, Joette. And I totally, totally hear you. I don't know how to make it quicker, you know? And typically, I mean, if I compare it to sort of how long competitions take within the public service, they are anywhere from 2 to 3 months. 2 months if the supervisor or the hiring manager is really on top of things, like really super on top of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but typically it takes anywhere from 3 to 4 months just to apply for one position in the public service. So yes, we are, you know, a couple of months longer than that. And interns, I've gotten that feedback from folks. It's like, this is really stressful. And I say, I hear you. I can't, you know, I wish I had a way to maybe change the service delivery model to do things differently, but I don't want to compromise any of the supports and the practice interviews and the, you know, that kind of thing. So totally hear you. And yeah, and I do encourage people, like even when people are contacting me now, they say, well, you know, am I guaranteed to get a position? I say, no, it's a competitive process. You're competing against other people who have disabilities. So it's sort of leveling that playing field. We're doing everything to help you be supportive or successful, but we can't guarantee it. So don't wait for this posting to come up. Keep applying for jobs, you know, connect with Work BC. You know, I can even work with you if you want. Sort of, you know, I have an unofficial caseload. I'm more than willing to do that, but do not leave all your eggs in one basket, which is the same for when interns, like this year, when they're finishing up the internship, they're trying to leave all their eggs in one basket because they really like where they're working. And I'm saying, no, don't. As hard as that is for you, like, you can't be guaranteed that you'll be able to stay in that position. It all comes down to money, to be perfectly blunt, within that particular ministry. Do we have money to create a position for this intern to slide into? And if they don't, you're not going to have a position there. So, you know, we start in March to help prepare you. So we're doing March, April, May, June, July, August. We're almost spending 6 months to prepare you to find a position. So totally hear you, Joette. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
The other thing is the online reality. I feel that all of us are finding that we're appreciative of the flexibility that some of the online stuff that we're experiencing, but I also feel that the two things, I guess. There is a loss of concrete personal interaction that we're all feeling at this stage, which to me is particularly poignant when it comes to these young adults who are trying to find their legs in terms of independence and self-realization. And I cannot help but think that all of these positions, not only yours, but generally, is, you know, pushing that experience further into the future for them, that putting on fully their grown-up pants and being able to be the fully fledged adults that they aspire to.
Yes. Totally hear you. And part of the expectations is to alleviate or to figure that out for supervisors is they need to create a 4 to 6 week work plan so that there's a variety of tasks so that the person isn't just reading or doing things virtually. So there's a variety in the tasks. I want you to meet with this person. I want you to take this webinar. I want you to have a virtual coffee with this person. I want you to find out about this. So there's a variety of tasks. So it keeps the intern engaged. It also, part of that is what are your check-ins with that intern? So across the public service branches, divisions, ministries, everybody's doing things a little bit differently, but the program tries to nudge and get the supervisor to think that through. So I often share the example with the branch that I'm in. We have check-ins twice a week, and they are 15-minute check-ins, and there's always a question. It has nothing to do with work. It's a matter of getting to know each other. So the questions are, I've learned more about my colleagues since COVID than I probably would have learned about them if I was in the office. So one of our questions this past week was, if you were stuck on a deserted island, would you want to have your worst enemy there or not, and why? The answers were like so insightful of folks. So for me, I said, well, I'm an extrovert, so I want my enemy there, whether I like that or not, because we can fight, we can have conversations, and maybe even I'll convince them to do it my way, right? So, so those kind of sort of benign questions that really get at that. Other interns this year, at the beginning, they were having almost daily check-ins with their supervisor, and then it's sort of morphed to weekly, and then now it's every 2 weeks, and it's always every 2 weeks. But then there's branch meetings. There's other virtual ways to connect with people. The public service has a whole bunch of stuff around virtual reality working, and so there's lots of support and resources provided for folks that isn't available to the external folks. So very mindful of like COVID fatigue or Zoom fatigue or all those kinds of things. And so how do we support people who are new to the public service who know no one? How do we help them create those relationships and those kind of bonds? There were some folks, the intern was in the same city as their supervisor, and so they have done socially distanced coffees. That isn't always possible because if it's, you're in a different location, you can't do that. So there's really flexibility in terms of how folks want to sort of work that through. But I think everybody's tired of the lack of face-to-face contact. Can you do it? Yeah. Are we missing something? Absolutely. And right now, I'm planning everything to be virtual because it's so much is unknown around COVID. They're suggesting, Dr. Henry's suggesting, herd immunity by September. But is that going to be the reality? Will we be able to go back into the office? What will that look like? So I'm just prepping people. It will likely be virtual for the beginning anyways, and then it might switch, and then you're going to get some of that face-to-face contact. Some interns, though, this year have loved working from home and don't want to go back into the office, which speaks to the diversity of people that we hire. And so for some folks who are introverted, maybe have some social anxiety, working from home really works for them.
We've discovered that too with our activities and meetings and stuff. And the truth of it is, the diversity is huge, and that should be sort of anticipated and embraced. But we don't always do what's best for us. And sometimes I think that getting too ensconced in your Zoom environment is sort of prohibits you from making a growth step that you may need to make or should make in your own best interests. And so obviously it's none of my business. It's up to every individual to come to that conclusion themselves. But I think it's good to be aware of that. that the parts, and it sounds to me like you have implemented some techniques for dealing with that lack of face-to-face contact, and that's appreciated, and for the need for diversity in one's workday. And I think we all need to do that in our day-to-day work environments. Myself, I'd be sitting with my butt in this chair for 8 hours a day if I didn't kick myself, you know?
Yep.
Does anyone else have more questions? I have a question for Odette about one of your slides. So I noticed in one of the opening slides where you were talking about the categories of work within the public service, you had a category called records management.
Oh, yes. Sorry,
I'm
I didn't
wondering
speak to that.
if you can maybe enlighten us as to what records management is in the context of public service, and what a supervisor working in that field would look for in an applicant who was applying to a position in that field.
Sure. Okay, good question. So record management within the public service, we used to have all paper, like probably lots of other businesses and organizations. With the advance of technology, we are moving more and more to file management online. And there are still remnants of our former way of doing things. And the other thing that's happened within the public service, because a lot of employees now can do things on their own. So like I can do my own documents, I can print them, I can edit them, you know, I can send them to folks. We don't need the sort of kind of old job description of an admin support to do that kind of work for us. Because we don't need as much admin support, because people are able to do more and more of the stuff that admin people used to do, the number of admin positions have gone down. And so we have these archives of paper files, and there's no kind of resources to sort them, you know, decide, you know, based on policy and rules, which ones will need to be destroyed, which ones we need to archive, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so the record management position could be cleaning up a room of files, which might mean that the person might have to come into the office. I don't know what's going to be for this year. Or it could be all of these electronic files, but people aren't following, quote unquote, the rules in terms of how they need to be filed. So somebody needs to go in there, and we have training, we have a community of practice, we have all kinds of information about how to do record management. So a position of this kind that would be posted, there would be training, there would be support, you would be introduced to a community practice, you would have tons and tons of support. This kind of position it's really, what I like about this is that it's sort of beginning to end. A person can really see the fruition of their work. Whereas in some of the other positions, you know, policy research, you do the work, you send it off, and then it goes sort of up the food chain, and people make some decisions based on your research. But you may or may not see that. The one thing I like about record management is that you're there at the beginning, you learn how to do whatever, you know, whether it's paper files, whether it's electronic filing, whatever that is. And then you get actually to see, oh, I'm starting to organize this, like it's, you know, it's coming to fruition. People can find things now. The naming conventions are being followed. So it's somebody who has good attention to detail, somebody who can go concrete sequential, because there's very clear black and white steps. First you do this, then you do that. Then you have to analyze this to see whether it goes in this particular bucket or that particular bucket. Somebody who doesn't mind really that attention to detail, concrete sequential kind of work. That and then, you know, other sort of attributes are, you know, willingness to learn, willingness to say, oh, I don't really understand. I think that goes for all internships. Willingness to be vulnerable and say, I need some help with this. So I think particularly for the record management, it's somebody who has attention to detail, understands kind of information management, knowledge, sort of, you know, information architecture, that kind of thing. But it doesn't mean that you have to have a degree in record management or information architecture, but do you have that ability to kind of concrete sequentially organize things and troubleshoot when you run into a glitch? whether you figure it out or you go to somebody to help you figure it out.
And I'm guessing based on that, that a person with project management experience from their post-secondary would also be quite valuable because they've seen a project through from start to finish.
Yep, absolutely. But even if somebody doesn't have that necessarily, you know, it might be in combination with other requirements on the job.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm just seeing another question in the chat. This person is wondering how many people typically apply to the program because they saw that there were different acceptance numbers per year.
Yeah, well, the different number of people who actually get internships. So it's not acceptance criteria. It's just the number of internships that we have available. We don't tend to share how many people apply to the internships just because things can change and it's really sort of fluid behind the scenes. So just know that it's a competitive process and we will support you to be as successful as you can be.
And if I can ask a follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
Do you find that in different years, there's different numbers of positions in the Lower Mainland versus Victoria versus the interior versus the north?
Yes, so here is where the positions have been physically located. And as you see in the first year, there's 1 in Vancouver and 8 in Victoria. And then the next year, 1 in Vancouver and 12 in Victoria. So that's when I was really, the feedback was coming in really clearly. Try to have more positions in the region. So then I really made a concerted effort to get more positions in the regions. And so you can see for this current year, we've got 4 in Vancouver, 7 in Victoria, and 4 in the region. So I don't know what this next cohort will look like, but I'm continually pushing, nudging, think about a regional position. And as I said, you know, we're still in COVID, so I don't know that it'll matter so much where you are located in the province, but the position itself will likely have an office physical location attached to it. But the person may be able, let's say that's Vancouver, but the person is working from Kamloops, you know. But again, I'm just anticipating that. It'll really depend on when I finalized all of the job descriptions for the host ministries this year, and we're not quite there yet.
But your goal for the program going forward is
Yep.
to have more balance between various regions.
Yeah, and not so much located in, you know, Vancouver and Victoria. But yeah.
Okay.
So Odette, I'm hoping that you will share with us the application links once
Yes.
once they are available.
Yeah, and if people would like to get on, we have a blind distribution list. So my email is on this, on the first slide of this PowerPoint. So when Joette sends it out, just send me an email, say, could you add me to your blind carbon copy distribution list? And that way we will send out an email to those folks when the postings go live and the links to them so that people can start to look at the postings. And on that posting, it'll be really clear what you need to do, how you need to get into the program, and then also what the available positions they are, so you can start thinking about, oh, this looks kind of interesting. And people are always welcome to contact me to get more information about process, around questions. I'm totally open to that. My goal is to be as transparent as I can be, and if I can't share something with you, I will tell you why.
Okay, well, thanks again, Odette, for your presentation. I'm sure everyone here found that very insightful. And thanks to all the participants for coming. We really appreciate having you here and supporting Square Peg.